York City took a $19 billion punch from one storm in 2012, and scientists say the next one will be worse. So what exactly is the plan to stop it? Hurricane Sandy in 2012 caused approximately $19 billion in damage and lost economic activity across New York City. The storm forced thousands of residents to evacuate flooded homes, overwhelmed subway tunnels, and plunged much of Manhattan into darkness. But here's what made Sandy especially terrifying for the people who plan cities for a living. It wasn't a freak once-in-a-century event that nobody could have predicted. It was a preview, a stress test that exposed every weakness in the city's coastal defenses and showed exactly what rising seas are capable of doing to the most densely populated city in the United States. Sandy produced a storm surge of 2.7 meters, coinciding with high tide. Water levels reached nearly 4 meters at their highest, a full meter higher than what's required to flood the city's entire subway network. The subway tunnels under the East River filled with seawater. Wall Street went dark for 2 days. Entire neighborhoods in Queens, Staten Island, and Lower Manhattan were submerged, and the critical infrastructure that 8 million people depend on, the sewers, the power grid, the hospitals, the tunnels, turned out to be dangerously exposed to the sea, and the water is still rising. A report by New York State's Department of Environmental Conservation found that sea levels could rise by more than a foot in some areas around the city within a decade or less. By 2050, the sea level in New York City is projected to rise by 40 centimeters. By 2100, projections range from 2 to 5 meters. What does that mean in practice? Scientists are predicting that by the end of the century, 20% of New York City's streets will be flooding daily from tidal flooding alone, not from storms, not from hurricanes, just from the normal tide coming in. Based on current projections, if no action is taken, sea level rise will submerge parts of Lower Manhattan on a regular basis within this generation, putting at risk the subway and ferry network, the sewer system, 10% of the city's jobs, and many historic, cultural, and community assets. By 2100, almost 50% of buildings in Lower Manhattan will be at risk from storm surge, and rising groundwater is projected to put 7% of buildings at risk of structural destabilization. This is not a far future scenario. This is what the modeling shows is coming, and the city is already behind. So what's actually being done about it? New York hasn't been sitting still since Sandy. What's happening right now is a massive multi-billion-dollar patchwork of individual flood projects, each one targeting a specific stretch of the city's coastline. The biggest one already in motion is the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project. In October 2024, New York City officials announced the completion of the first phase of the project, the largest urban resilience project currently underway in the United States. With a $1.45 billion budget, it will reshape 2.4 miles of Manhattan's shoreline by 2026, building an integrated system of raised parklands, berms, flood walls, and adjustable floodgates. The entire system is designed to last 100 years. Then there is the Lower Manhattan Coastal Resiliency Initiative, a series of interconnected projects wrapping around the southern tip of Manhattan. One project will extend from the Brooklyn Bridge to Montgomery Street along the East River, deploying flip-up gates, roller gates, swing gates, and a flood door across a mile of waterfront. Another is rebuilding and elevating Battery Park, the historic green space at the very tip of the island. Further north, the Battery Park City Authority is planning a $1.6 billion project running along the Battery Park City Esplanade, crossing the West Street Highway, with construction expected to begin in late 2025 and finish in 2030. The entire Lower Manhattan Coastal Resiliency Project is projected to cost between $5 billion and $7 billion and be completed between 2040 and 2050. Each of these projects is important. Each one protects a neighborhood, a stretch of waterfront, a critical piece of infrastructure. But here is the problem. Every single one of them is a local fix, a piece of a puzzle, and the puzzle is enormous. New York City has 520 miles of coastline. The projects currently underway cover a few miles of it. So here's where things get genuinely complicated. For years, engineers and city planners have argued that what New York truly needs is not a collection of neighborhood walls, but a system-wide solution, something that protects the entire harbor, something that stops the storm surge before it even reaches the city. That plan exists, and it's staggering in scale. The US Army Corps of Engineers developed a $52 billion proposal, the most comprehensive system of coastal protections ever planned for the New York region. It would build 12 massive storm surge gates across the major waterways surrounding New York City, plus coastal barriers across more than 41 miles of shoreline, including extensive seawalls in East Harlem, Lower Manhattan, Southern Brooklyn, and Staten Island. The plan would also include natural solutions, wetland restoration, and living shorelines built from sand, oyster shells, and plants to blunt the force of incoming water before it reaches the walls. This was designed to be the definitive answer, the thing that would actually protect the city. Then the politics started. The study had been underway since 2016, until it was abruptly paused in 2020 when the Trump administration cut funding. Then President Trump publicly mocked the larger version of the plan on Twitter, calling it a costly, foolish, and environmentally unfriendly idea. He suggested the region's residents get their mops and buckets ready. The Biden administration restored funding and the study restarted. But then came environmental pushback, community opposition, and a Government Accountability Office report warning that the Army Corps' plan failed to account for the full range of flood risks, including ordinary tidal flooding and heavy rain. By summer 2025, the grand plan had been scaled back significantly, refocused on a handful of immediate, short-term projects, including a proposed flood wall along the Harlem River and wetland improvements on Staten Island. The $52 billion regional plan, the one that could have protected the entire harbor, is for now stalled. Even the projects that are moving forward are under threat. The Seaport Coastal Resilience Project recently lost $42.2 million in expected federal funding when the Trump administration abruptly halted FEMA's Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program. That's just one project. Across the city, flood resilience work depends heavily on federal dollars, and those dollars are becoming unpredictable. After 2 decades of debate and reversals, climate resilience advocates have consistently pointed out that the US has a troubled track record with infrastructure megaprojects, and anxieties about cost overruns and political interference are entirely justified. It's worth pausing on what New York City actually is. It is the financial capital of the world. Wall Street processes trillions of dollars in transactions every day. The subway moves millions of people. The port handles enormous volumes of cargo. The city generates more economic output than most countries. What was a 500-year flood event before the industrial era is now a 24-year flood event in New York, and in 30 years, projections suggest it will become a 5-year event. That means the kind of destruction Sandy caused in 2012, the kind that felt catastrophic, unusual, once in a generation, could become something that happens every few years. Routine, expected, unavoidable, unless something is built to stop it. New York is not lacking in plans. It is not lacking in engineering talent, or in people who understand the threat, or in proposals for how to defend the city. What it keeps running out of is the political will and financial consistency to see those plans through. The total cost of the efforts currently underway and planned across New York City and the surrounding region is approaching $70 billion. The money is spread across dozens of projects, managed by multiple agencies, at different stages of design and construction, dependent on federal funding that changes with every administration. The city is building, but the sea is rising faster than the walls are going up. The $30 billion question isn't really about engineering. The engineering is figured out. The question is whether a city and a country can sustain the political commitment and the financial will to protect itself over a timeline measured in decades, when the pressure to cut spending is constant and the next storm is always just one election cycle away. New York has survived everything the world has thrown at it for 4 centuries, but the ocean doesn't negotiate, and it isn't waiting.